Hey everyone, and welcome back to Practically Zero Waste, a podcast for making zero waste living as practical as possible. How do you deal with your climate anxiety? What do you do when the environmental to-do list is so overwhelming that it seems easier to do nothing instead? Jessica Correa, the founder of Random Acts of Green, has an answer for us. As the #1 green behavior promoter, she knows a thing or two about how to start doing green acts every day that reduce carbon emissions and add up to make a big difference. Are you ready to combat climate change? Let's do it! Before we get into Random Acts of Green, tell me a little bit about yourself and where your desire to make a positive environmental difference came from.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a 20-something living in Peterborough. I moved here from Oakville, Ontario about 7 years ago, and I moved here to start my environmental science and studies degree. Originally, that whole idea to take an environmental degree was inspired by my work at a fast food restaurant when I was in high school.
Wow.
And I was kind of saddened by the amount of food waste in particular that I saw thrown out every single day while I worked there. And I kind of thought to myself, you know, there's quite a few of these fast food restaurant chains across Canada and into the United States, and I just kind of thought about how much food was being wasted, and it kind of made me angry, and then I started getting a little bit passionate about it, so I decided to apply, and then I came to Peterborough to start my degree.
Amazing. I love where that inspiration came from. So many people that I talk to, their inspiration comes from all different places, but working in a fast food restaurant would really ignite that anger.
Yes, and it totally did. And then I went to school, and then I actually worked at a landfill for a summer during my undergraduate degree. So
Incredible.
I worked there as a summer job, and of course that made me even more fiery in a way because I saw the amount of waste that was our society wastes so much, and I saw the overconsumption. I saw plastic utensils, I saw old, children's toys, I saw just so much waste, and it really started to become more of the forefront of my mind. When you work with waste for a full summer for 8 hours a day, you really start to see the problem with your own eyes, and a lot of people have that out of sight, out of mind sort of mentality, and when you work in it and experience it, and you realize there really is no way, and so I really did inspire me to do something about the problem.
That's phenomenal. Like, how did you get the job at a landfill? Was that something that you sought out?
My original interest was in waste management. So I started, I really wanted to go into waste management since I, worked there at the fast food restaurant. And then over some time, I kind of shifted gears and realized that it wasn't really the waste problem that I wanted to do something about. It was the climate change problem. So I kind of shifted gears to, waste is a part of it, but not, the only thing that you can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I really started shifting into learning more about behavior change and figuring out more ways we could engage people about things that they could do for our environment, because I realized quickly while I was in school that a lot of people are talking about, species extinction and, the planet heating up and the flooding and all these catastrophic events that are happening, but nobody was really talking about what people could do about it. So I kind of was getting frustrated, and all I would ever hear is people talking about, how we're all doomed and how we're only, one person and, there's nothing we can do about climate change, and, what's the point? I'll be dead before the problem matters. And I just kept hearing these excuses over and over, which really made me, again, it added to my, almost little festering anger in my heart and in my soul, I guess, if you will. And I started realizing that, the only way to do something about this was to be more positive about it and to give people solutions and, not complain about it, but, make it stand out. And I also realized that a lot of people were, turned off by the environmental messaging because it was a lot of doom and gloom. It made people feel guilty. And it also made people feel like they couldn't do anything about it, and it made them feel alienated, especially I found that, the average Joe, if you will, felt that, like action was only for tree huggers or hippies or protesters, and it wasn't really for the average person in the world. So there was kind of this like disconnect between like the gong ho people who are like super hardcore about being green, and then everyone else. So I wanted to bridge that gap, and I wanted to provide people that might not be super green already or super into it, and I wanted to educate them about the problem as well.
That's phenomenal. And so enter Random Acts of Green. What is this?
Enter Random Acts of Green. Yes. So that Random Acts of Green was started as a way to, I wanted Random Acts of Green, the movement and the cause and the brand to stand out as something that people would think about when they thought about climate change, and to, like I said, kind of bridge that gap. So I decided to create an environmental movement that was kind of out of the box and was more for the people that didn't really have, any idea of what they could do. And I kind of wanted it to be almost like, how you start losing weight, like if you're on a weight loss journey, you start with small things and you start learning about it from the start. And so I kind of was inspired by Weight Watchers, actually, in a way, because Weight Watchers has this positive atmosphere where they encourage people to start small and like lose weight and start with 2 pounds a week and all these things. So I wanted it to kind of be that, but for environmental purposes. So I wanted people to start learning about, stop complaining about the things they can't do and start understanding that there's lots of things that they can do right now.
And losing that weight of your carbon footprint one day at a time.
Exactly.
Okay, so Random Acts of Green is not just an app. That's how I kind of entered into this, was that it was just an app, but it's a whole movement. How is that manifested beyond the app?
Actually, the app was after Random Acts of Green began, and it was kind of a natural transition to what I was trying to accomplish. So it was kind of like a complementary tool that I wanted people to be able to use when they were having climate anxiety or they were thinking about all these negative problems. I wanted to be like, actually, hey, here's a solution, here's what you can do about the problem, or at least get started, at least, have that sigh of relief that, here's other people doing something about climate change. Here are people refusing a plastic straw or refusing a plastic bag or remembering to turn off their vehicle to idle less or composting or they're carpooling. Like, there's so many different things that people are doing, and I wanted people to see that so that they didn't feel like nobody was doing anything. So, Random Acts of Green definitely started as just like a brand, a Facebook page, an online community, and it had nothing else really associated with it except for the goal of encouraging people to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions through behavior change. And that still stands true today. That is the mission and the vision of Random Acts of Green, is to get, whether you're a police officer or you're a nurse or you're, a single mom, or it doesn't matter, if you're a hockey player, who you are, but you can do something about this problem and you can get started today.
And that you should care, and that there's an ease that can come with this. It's not going to be hard. It's not going to be intimidating. It's random. It doesn't have to be systematic. You're not forced into it. You just get to pick your random things each day that makes the world a little greener.
Exactly.
I think that's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the app, because I wrote up this list of questions for our interview and then looked at the app, and it's awesome because... So in the app, what I've gathered from it is that it's like a list of suggestions almost for people to just scroll through and click, yeah, I turned off the lights today, or yeah, I saved water by not flushing every single time. But you maybe wouldn't even think to do those things unless the suggestion was there or you're looking at a checklist. And I think that is awesome. So
so the app was actually an idea that I had, and I work with a few people that are, I forgot to mention, I did do my master's degree in this subject. So I did a little bit of work on, marketing and behavior change and a bit of like psychology type of research, actually on car sharing. I wanted to get more people to see alternative forms of transportation. I wanted them to make the switch between private vehicles into an idea where they could share vehicles vehicles and then fill that gap in with like biking and walking. But that research kind of like spawned this idea where, I was really more interested in the behavior change component, like how to get people to change their behavior to do more green things. And I realized that I didn't really care what it was. I just wanted them to do something. It didn't matter whether it was, driving less or biking more or carpooling or reducing their waste. I didn't really care if they were, reducing their meat consumption. I just wanted them to pick something, do it, make the intention, and then create a plan for it. And so I thought of this idea with a couple of people, and we had some professors involved at Trent, and we had some other master students, and we had a roundtable discussion about what we could do to actually motivate and incentivize people to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Thus, the app idea was born. And thankfully, we actually were provided with some provincial funding for the app on the Onslaught, which was pretty phenomenal for a size of Random Acts of Green being a small startup company. The government saw some value in what we were trying to accomplish. So we actually took a list of actions and we quantified the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that were reduced by each action. Yeah. And then we took about all last summer, a lot of work went into it, actually determining like a point system where every action that you did, you would earn green points, and those green points could actually be redeemed for real world products and services. So for example, I could actually, if I want to buy a pizza today, I could actually get a discount on that pizza because I've done so many green acts, and Boston Pizza is willing to provide a discount for people that have committed an X amount of green acts. So it's more of like a motivational type of tool so that people feel like, okay, I'm going to do these things because I'm going to compete, I'm going to earn points, and then I'm going to get something out of it. And whether that's a discount or an eco product such as a bamboo toothbrush, or there's tons of different items that we've included on the app to try to get people to think differently and make these behavior choices that we so desperately need to get people to do.
It's phenomenal. I know I've already said this, but when I opened up the app the other day, I was going through and being like, okay, I did this, I'm clicking all these things, and then I see that there's points gathering, and I got so excited about the points. I didn't think that I was a competitive person, but I was realizing that I could redeem these points, and it was just
100%.
All of a sudden.
And it's funny, like I remember there was like a point in time, like when we first launched the app, that even like my boyfriend, he was like, oh, I'm going to beat you to take out the compost because I want points. And he was like, I'm going to, plant trees. Like we actually went to a tree planting event just so we could just earn more green points because it was just like a fun thing to do. So,
I'm
hoping that the better, the more that the app grows and things. And actually we're in, one of your questions here that I've just got open is, how has the project grown and where will it go? Is we want this app to be in every Canadian's hand, or maybe not every Canadian, but we want this to be a cross Canada type of movement that gets people engaged about what they can do, and gets them competing for points and gets them getting some sort of reward or discount. And the other cool part of the app is that it has like an altruistic function to it, which is still being developed, but basically every time that you earn green points, you could actually give those green points away to like a friend or something, that you could like plant a tree on behalf of somebody else, or do something like do a random act of kindness for somebody else with your green points, so that you could spend them on something positive for the community as well. So that's kind of like a developing process where you don't necessarily have to spend the green points on yourself. You can actually give them away and do something positive with them. But I think that's going to need a little bit more work, but it's a really important component of what we're trying to do, is like merge this idea of like random acts of green or random acts of kindness almost for our planet.
It's just such a warm and fuzzy feeling. Like, my goodness. Well done. I'm just so excited about this, and I've been waiting for such a bizarre, like, it's not bizarre to want rewards, but but the fact that I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Hold up, I can get points for this. I can redeem this stuff. Like I was over the moon for that.
Totally. Fun. And I think like, even like me, like, I mean, I'm obviously biased. I helped, I ideate this idea, but at the same time, I use the app. Obviously, I'm a user, so every time I'm at the grocery store or something and I refuse a plastic bag, I'm just excited to log it because it makes me feel good. I know that, I'm doing something positive, and that I'm getting recognition for it, or that it just makes me feel better about climate change as a whole because I'm doing something, or I'm trying to reduce waste, or I'm trying to, like last year, I, took my bike, and it actually tracks your bike trip, and I didn't use my car for a trip that was like, 7 kilometers or something. So I tracked my trip, and I got green points, and I did that because I wanted the green points. So it's just like these fun little things that you can make these simple switches, and it just provides that, like, in the back of your mind, like, hey, I can do this action. It's not that hard, and I'm going to get green points for it.
Yeah, exactly. And the recognition aspect of it too. There's a way of sharing your green act, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, you can do that actually on social media. I'm not really sure if many people have used that function yet, but I'm hoping that they do in the future. And I think that would be really cool. Like, you can share it externally, like on your Facebook account, I believe, and as on your like Facebook Messenger. Even you can like email it or something like, hey, I composted today or something, just to get people excited about, you doing something, and then hopefully inspiring them to do something as well. Because some of these ideas come from the idea of recycling, where, one person put out their recycling bin, and then the whole street saw them put out the recycling bin as well, right? So they were inspired to continue to do something because it became a social norm. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with this app, is that, we would create this mentality that everybody's doing something about climate change, and you should too.
Yeah. Okay, so the small acts every day adding up to something bigger. That is kind of the main core of this, is that it's not something, and we've talked about this, that it's not the pressure to drop everything and become vegan and only ever bike to work even though you live in Canada in the winter.
Totally.
Yeah, so the small acts every day that add up and build habits. Are you hoping that this app and this whole movement will help inspire people to form habits?
Yes, definitely. And I think, like I said, moving back to the whole behavior change of losing weight and going to the gym, like, there are so many different ways that you can accomplish that. You can either eat less, you can exercise more, but, you're not necessarily going to become an Olympic athlete, right? Like, those are extreme things that most people aren't necessarily going to do. So can you start by walking a little bit more, walking on your break, or can you take up a sport? But it's not about telling people what they have to do, right? Like, if I were to tell myself, like, I hate swimming, I'm like the worst swimmer on the planet. If someone were to tell me, like, you need to go swim and that's the only way you can lose weight, you're probably not going to do it. So we need to give people options and choice, so that they understand that there's multiple ways that they can get involved, so that they don't feel that, they have to buy a Tesla or something, right? Like, most people can't afford a Tesla right now. And so, even installing solar panels on your roof, like, some people aren't going to do that. So can we provide a menu of choices where people can understand that they don't necessarily have to choose that, they can choose other things. Just like, if you were to get fit, you can go swimming, or you can go for a run, or you can play squash, or you can play tennis. Like, there's so many different ways that you can get active. And it's the same type of thing with climate change. There's a lot of different ways that you can get involved, but not doing anything is not an excuse, because if you can't do one thing, look for the ways that you can actually make an impact. Maybe it's reducing your red meat consumption once a week, meatless Mondays, right? Like, there's just a lot of different ways that you can make an impact that doesn't necessarily mean, becoming an Olympic athlete, if the analogy holds true. To go all in and become
warrior.
Totally vegan and all these things, which is great for the people that they can do that, right? And I think that that's amazing, but not everybody is going to make that leap of faith that quickly. So we need to allow people to ease into it and make those steps that suit their lifestyle. Like, I'm not going to tell people that live out in rural areas to bike to work every day, because it's probably too far. So what else can they do? Can they install a composter, or can they carpool in? Things like that.
Yeah, and just having that list of suggestions, because sometimes it's hard to brainstorm so my immense environmental to-do list, there's so much that needs to be done. Where do I start? And so having this list of suggestions is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the main purpose, of course, of this type of tool. Obviously, apps are kind of like an upcoming thing these days. So we kind of thought, all right, where are people these days? They're on their smartphones, they're on social media. How can we hit them where it hurts, and in a way where they can access this information quickly, and in an easy to understand way. And we thought that an app would be the best way to do that.
Yeah, it's so simple. like you said, it's a business. So are you involved with other businesses or partnerships in the city of Peterborough? How are you engaged with other people?
Random Acts of Green is a business. It is a for-profit social enterprise, and I see that, very strongly because Random Acts of Green, we wanted to be a business because we wanted to basically create a sustainable model that would create change. So we were really adamant about making sure that people understood that our goal is not necessarily to make money, but it's to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we've created a tool that can sustain itself, or hopefully sustain itself over the next little while, on something that provides value in the market. So that was kind of our idea behind the structure of Random Acts of Green. So we do have various partnerships with the app, and basically those partnerships exist where app vendor who's providing their products are actually paying for a membership fee to be involved with our app. So if they want to have a product or a service placed on the app, they have to pay Random Acts of Green a fee to be included to provide their specific zero waste product, whether that's a makeup product or a bamboo toothbrush, or whether that's a discount on a renewable energy package. They have to pay Random Acts of Green a fee to actually be included on helping individuals reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So we're helping market and advertise for these specific products like a beeswax wrap or whatever that helps people, reduce their waste or reduce their energy consumption.
It's really cool, actually, that you're able to make a job out of your environmental passion. I feel like there's a lot of people in this zero waste community that are very passionate about this, but it has to be a side thing because there's not a place for all of their energies to go in a workplace. But you've created a job and an infrastructure for being able to be environmentally friendly and be employed at the same time.
Right. And that's been, obviously with any social enterprise type of business model, it is extremely tricky because on the one hand, you're trying to sustain the business, but on the other hand, you're trying to create change. And this is a challenge with many social enterprises because at the same time, you have to accept revenue. You have to make money in order to sustain it, while at the same time staying true to the goals of the company and what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes those things don't mix. So you have to make sure that you're aligned well with your mission and your values, and trying to, always keep that end goal in mind, which of course is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through behavior changes. But obviously I created something that could actually, I thought to myself, how do we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. How do we create a product and something in the market that people will value, that people will use in order to accomplish this? So that's why we decided on the model that we did. And of course, Random Acts of Green is only been around for 3 years. We're definitely still in a startup phase, but so far so good at keeping the momentum going, and hopefully the business grows at the same time the impact grows as well.
Absolutely. And are you able to track the impact? So you've seen the number of users grow on your app, and all of that sort of statistical data that you have. Are you noticing a pretty intense increase?
Well, it's interesting. I haven't paid $1 in advertising or marketing, and I see, a growth in users every day, and I'm not sure even where they're coming from. I think it's from word of mouth, and I think it's from people saying, you know what, check this out, and they're telling their friends about it. Even on Christmas, I noticed an increase of 12 users just randomly on Christmas Day. It must have been people, gathered around a dinner table, and all of them might have been talking about climate change.
Yeah.
And then there was somebody that said something about a solution, and all of a sudden there was this spike in users. I was like, this is really random, but it's really cool. And so that's tends to happen, but we actually are on the brink of launching a nationwide communication strategy to utilize our volunteers, which is a really big element of Random Acts of Green. Part of our movement piece is we have 406 volunteers in over 130 municipalities. That's including Victoria and Calgary, Edmonton, and Nova Scotia even has a whole bunch of volunteers out there, in Toronto, and all these cities across Canada, and they've got got clusters of volunteers. We've got these 406, like almost like a volunteer army of behavior change advocates that are really passionate about kind of helping us spread the word about what we're trying to accomplish. And our idea is to leverage that volunteer base to help us spread the word about the app and about the movement so that people can actually download it and use it and understand more things that they can do. So that's been really cool to see. And we always have an increase in volunteer base. So we've seen a growth in not only like our Facebook following, slow growth, but still growth, as well as our app, definitely growth there as well, and our volunteer program. So all the things are growing at a steady level, and I'd like to see them all exponentially grow in the next year or so.
That's amazing. Yeah, and 3 years. I didn't realize it had only been 3 years for you guys, which also
we're a very young company.
Yeah, it could feel like a long time, and it could feel like a very short blip. So you're doing really well. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Do all of these volunteer groups across Canada organize meetups or events or anything like that in their municipality?
That's a great question, and it's actually something that I'm looking forward to implementing in the next little while. It hasn't been implemented yet, as I've been pretty busy with some other things with Random Acts of Green, but one of the things that we do want to implement is hosting these meetups. But, that creates a lot of sort of like, work up front to actually do, so we need to make sure that our goals are there. But once we want to host like launch parties type of thing, and ideas that, the volunteers who live in a specific city are actually clustered and they can actually meet up and talk to each other, maybe strategize on other ways to engage people in climate action. We're really excited about that because I think that can be sort of the turning point, and having people help us spread the word, of course, is the best way to do this. So, word of mouth and hosting these meetups and getting the message across to more people can only be done if people are the eyes and ears of Random Acts of Green in the city where they reside. I'm only one person, and I do have a little bit of help, but I definitely need the help of the volunteers to help us spread the word and the impact that Random Acts of Green hopefully can have over the next year or so.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that there's a few different groups just within Peterborough, small little Peterborough, that are doing zero waste movements and plastic-free Peterborough, just little Facebook things. And
definitely.
I think that they organize stuff like that, meetups. And so are there ways of testing your meetups and event organizations and stuff with these people?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I'm totally open, and I think I am a part of some of the online groups like the Zero Waste Peterborough and the Plastic Free movement. And, I like to say that Random Acts of Green is supporting these movements, like whether it's minimalist shopping and buying less, new clothing and, going thrift shopping, as well as the electric vehicle movement, right? Like we want to have people become early adopters of electric vehicles. And so, we really are kind of the cheerleader for any action or any behavior change that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, there's the vegan and the vegetarian Meatless Monday type of movements. Like we are standing behind these movements, and we do stand for them because, like I said, they're all ways that we can help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So we I think I mentioned in our original email, was that I don't necessarily know too much about one thing, but I know a lot about a lot of things. Kind of created an atmosphere even in my own head where I've got a good understanding of all the different environmental movements and the trends that are out there, and I've decided to just kind of know the tip of the iceberg of all of them so that I can participate in discussions such as this. But I haven't really delved deep into any of them. I've just decided to have this idea where I can spread the message about all of them, and then give people that choice as which path they'd like to go down.
And that's important too, because I think that you can get really overwhelmed by any single one. So, I mean, in this case, again, we're trying to avoid getting overwhelmed by all of this, and instead being aware that, okay, I don't have to go vegan overnight. I don't have to, sell my car and walk everywhere. It's the idea that you can just do a taste of each one to try and...
Exactly. And that's what I'm big on supporting, is because I feel that, if we portray the message that you have to go all in and become an Olympic athlete, you know what I mean? That people are going to be like, all right, that's like impossible, and we're going to turn people off from it. So we've got to be really selective of the messaging that we're trying to put out there, and that's why Radiant Max of Green is special, because we want to say, hey, here's a list of different things you can do. You know, do one thing, do two things, do 10 things, but do something, right?
Yes.
And here's our various ideas. There's just so many things that are good for our planet that people might not necessarily think about that they can do very easily.
I know we talked about all these different starting off points for getting involved in climate action, but do you have some top ones that are as simple as can be for you to just encourage people to get started today?
I think the biggest thing is definitely like learning a bit more about what can be done. And I think that comes in various forms, right? I think there's lots of blogs and lots of ideas and things like that that are currently out there that people can learn from. So I think, you know, getting a lay of the land, if you will, like understanding more things where people can actually get involved is a great place to start. And of course, learning more about, you know, different things that they can do to make them feel not totally overwhelmed, you know. And I think asking questions is a good one too as well. Do I really need what I'm buying? Do I really need that straw? Do I really need the big meal at a restaurant and then the rest of it's going to go in the garbage? You know, think about those things and educate yourself. And then the next would be to make a decision and a commitment, right? Like figure out what the action is you want to take, whether it's, you know, Meatless Monday, implement these actions and just like make that commitment. And don't just say you're going to make a commitment. Maybe get some people to hold you accountable for it. You know, get friends involved, get your boyfriend or girlfriend involved, get your family involved, and then scale the change. You know, make it personal, make it something that other people, like I said, can get involved in. The other thing is creating systems, right? I mean, like going to the gym. You know, you need certain things to go to the gym. You need a water bottle, you know, a reusable water bottle. You need gym clothes. You need a gym bag. You need a lock for the locker. You need the gym membership, right? There's so many things that you need to actually do beforehand before it's actually possible for you to take that leap of faith and actually enter the gym. Now you need to learn how to do a squat and how to do a deadlift or how to, you know, run on the treadmill, right? You need to learn these things before you can actually implement them. So you also need to have systems. You need the right tools in order to do that. Maybe it's buying a vegetarian or a vegan book, or it's getting the right recipes and understanding the nutrients that you need, right? Like they're just different things, like whether it's setting up a carpool plan at work, right? You need to understand that, all right, now I'm going to be carpooling. I need to set the right time. I need to get the right person that's going in the same direction. Like you have to plan, right?
Yeah.
Before. And the other thing is, you know, creating like rewards and incentives, right? Like something that you get a treat after a certain time, right? You have to reward yourself with, you know, with something. You know, if I do this, then I'm going to go see a movie or something, right? Like, and then of course it's sharing your success stories. You know, you need to get the success stories out there, and you need to tell people that you're doing these things, and you know, use social media. Social media is powerful. It can be a great tool or it can be an enemy, but at the end of the day, it can be something that's really good. You know, back to the beginning, is that even if you want to get started but you don't know where to start, we need to again create a system or a plan that's going to help you be successful. So set yourself up for success, I guess, is my biggest thing. So I guess to reiterate, find something that you'd like to start on, make a plan for it, you know, involve other people, and then once you've accomplished it, you know, reward yourself or you know, share your success stories.
Yeah. So back to the app, you can engage with other people on it. Is there a way of sharing within the app and competing within the app with friends?
Definitely, yeah. There's actually like a leaderboard where you can actually see, like, you know, some people are super competitive, so there are ways that you can see where you stand on the leaderboard, and you can even have friends online. So if you decide to download the app and you have 3 or 4 friends, you can add them, and then you can see what they're doing today. So it holds each other accountable because you can see what other people are doing, and they can see what you're doing as well. So everybody's kind of on the same team, and we're all working together to make a difference and make an impact.
I think that's great. And I think there's some learning platforms, and you are competing with other people on those to say, oh, like I learned more levels of this language this week than my mom did or something like that.
At the the beginning when we were coming up with the concept of this whole idea was we did look at various behavior change apps, like, Carrot Rewards is an app where you can get rewarded for walking more steps, right?
Okay.
There's MyFitnessPal, which allows you to track your food and log in on there, so that you can actually see the calories that you're eating and the nutrients that you're getting, and it helps you lose weight, right? So there's all these other apps out there, and so we took some concepts from all of them and kind of mashed them together and created this app where we're rewarding people in various ways. And I think it's important to remember that people are turned on by different things. Some people are really competitive, some people aren't. Some people want to get points for something and then spend them. Some people just want to log their actions, right? Just to feel good about it. So it really depends on where the person and what they're motivated by. And I think it's important to understand that if we could provide as many different motivational tools, we can help reduce the barriers to inaction. So that's what we've done with Random Acts of Green, is like we've tried to turn people on by whatever they're turned on by and create as much motivational tools as possible into the app, so that hopefully we can get more and more people engaged.
It's so good. How within the app did you determine how many carbon points would be reduced by individual actions?
All last year was actually, we worked with a consulting company that actually does this. They actually quantify the greenhouse gas emissions that are reduced by each action. So things like, remembering your reusable mug over, a paper cup, right? So they did all the math and the research behind each action so that we could actually include it on the app as well. So each action that we have on there is actually directly related to CO2 reduction. So one of the things that people oftentimes will ask me is, how come picking up a litter isn't on the app, or how come this isn't on the app, right? And they'll ask me these questions, and I'm like, it's actually, there are some things that people feel that are good for the environment, which they are absolutely. Like picking up litter is great for the environment, but it doesn't actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It just, helps wildlife. It doesn't get into our ocean. So continue to do that action, absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily reduce CO2 like driving less does, right? So we wanted the actions to be directly related to CO2 reduction, so that we can quantify the amount of CO2 that was being reduced by our apps particularly. So we wanted to encourage actions that would help either save water or reduce CO2. And I think, in the future, as hopefully the app continues to grow and things continue to build, we have some room for improvement so that we could include more things that are good for our planet but don't necessarily reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that we could also create like a separate point system for that, it's good for the planet but not necessarily attributed to CO2 reduction. But to keep things simple for now, we've just decided to include actions that are directly correlated to CO2 reduction.
Can you just tell me how composting would reduce your carbon emissions?
Yeah, so composting is a big one. It's linked to methane. So the more that we put food waste into our landfills, the more methane that it produces. And methane is more potent than CO2. I believe it's like 24 times or something like that. But it's worse than CO2 for the environment. So getting more people involved in composting, whether that's through their city pickups. A lot of cities now have composting pickups. But if they don't, then, installing a composter in your backyard, really important. And you'll actually save, I'm just looking here on the app, 1,602 grams of CO2 per week for that action. I'm living at a property, I'm renting it, and when I moved here, the landlord didn't have a composter, and I said, oh my gosh, I cannot throw this food waste into the garbage. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing. And originally he said no. He's like, no, I don't want to install one. I don't think it's going to get used. And I was like, I swear, I created this like point form sheet that was like why it benefits him as a landlord, why it's good for our planet, and like why the benefits are amazing, and how it's going to reduce his, expenses of buying a plastic garbage bags all the time for the garbage. Anyways, I went like gung ho, and I actually, as a good feel story, he actually bought the composter and helped me install it. So after don't take no for an answer. Sometimes you have to challenge people and like really get them to see the benefits, and put your sales hat hat on and really understand that, some people need that extra, push, and they need to see it from their eyes. And if you can get your numbers in line and things, then, you just might win.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that worked out for you.
Yeah, me too, because I don't think I could have, lived with myself throwing out food.
No. And I absolutely, we moved into this place in Peterborough and just gathered all our compost in the freezer for quite a while. And then as soon as we finished building a composter just out of some skids, we were using that immediately because I was like, I cannot bring myself to put that in the garbage. No. And so when it's breaking down in a composter, food waste, as opposed to in a black garbage bag in a landfill, in a composter, it's not producing methane, or?
It is producing methane, but it's not, I'm not really totally, good at the science here. I don't know if you want to totally ask me about this, but I know that it's better to have it composted in a digester or a backyard composter because it's not mixed in with everything else in our landfill. So I know that it still does produce methane, but it's not mixed in with everything else, so it breaks down easier and it actually goes back into our soil, which is better for the planet, et cetera, et cetera.
I think, now that we're thinking about it, I think that in a context of a garbage bag in a landfill, there's not any sun or light or probably enough heat for food to properly break down.
Right,
and so it's
exactly.
releasing a different kind of gas than if it was breaking down in nature, like a log decaying, then it would not be releasing maybe such a concentrated amount of methane or any methane at all. I can't remember what that is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
We'll
do some research and talk about that some other podcast. We don't need to include that here.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. We're not really an authority on that. Do you have any other ideas that you wanted to share, either about the app or about inspiring people at all?
I think the best thing to do is just, get started, start with something small. And I think, be cognizant of, who you're talking to, because I think that the majority of the population believes in climate change and they know that it's a real problem and they know that it's a pressing problem. And I think a lot of people are scared about it. And I think that's why, a lot of people kind of freeze up, when you talk about it, and they kind of get nervous or uncomfortable. And so I think we need to be a little bit more careful about the audience that we're talking to, but, remembering that most people are good in this world. I think there's a very small portion of people that are, climate change deniers and they don't want to do anything. So we don't want to talk to those people. We want to talk to the bulk, which I would say is like 80% of people, right? They care and they understand that this is a problem and that we're behind it, right? And I think that it's really important to craft your messaging so that we can inspire more people. And I think, again, which I mentioned at the beginning, is a lot of the time it's talking about the doom and gloom. We're not talking about the solution. So if we have a solution such as the app or some other means, I know that the app is never going to create total change, right? There's multiple other people and tons of environmentalists doing things that are important, like protesting, and they're doing things like, challenging our governments, and they're doing a lot in that way, right? So I think we need a mixed methods approach to combating this problem, and we need people on the front line. We need the people that are, advocating and protesting, but we also need people that are just your average Joe that can make an impact. They can refuse the plastic straw. They can, they can reduce the meat that they eat. Like they can do these things, and I think those are the people that we need to, really engage, because I think that's the bulk of the population. We've got the really extremists who are, already vegan and already driving electric cars and, gung-ho and are doing great, but we need the others who aren't necessarily extremists or doing that much. We need them to be the people that are acting now and understanding what they can do. So, I think we need to remember as well that this is a problem. It is happening. It's, we know that humans are having an effect on the planet. So, we all have a moral obligation to do something about it. And I think the way that we talk to people about that is important. And I think the solutions that we provide, it can't just be about the problem. Like I could spend forever talking about the ocean levels rising and the coral reefs declining and all the species extinction. I could spend the whole podcast talking about the problems, but I think we need to be more focused on the solutions and the tangible, actionable items that people can do right now.
I want to remind people who are listening to this too that you can make these small changes every day, but don't let anybody make you feel bad about how you're not making all the changes at once, because that's not the way to do this, and that's exactly what this app and this whole movement is trying to encourage, is that you can make those small changes, and even if you're still buying things in packaging and you're still making choices that are not as sustainable as you could be, just take it slowly and you can accomplish it eventually. And yeah, don't feel bad or turned off by the movement if anybody is saying, oh, you got that in a plastic bag, how dare you. Like, don't listen to that.
I think that's the best way to turn people off, is like guilting people and making them feel like crap about something. And
judgment.
I've entered a room before of a meeting before, and everyone in the room had plastic water bottles, and everyone was like, oh no, Jessica's here, she's gonna have this big fit. And I was like, calm down. Like, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish, is guilting people into, feeling bad about things. I mean, if that works, then great, but I don't think it works all the time. Because, people are just going to feel like crap, and then they're going to feel guilty, and then, I don't know. I think it might actually make it worse. So, try not to do that. But, I've been, if anyone has any ideas, even for me, I've been trying to figure out like a nice script for people that could,
how do I do this
encourage
kindly?
them. Yeah, like, did you know that there are other options that you're currently doing? Like, I mean, I go to the gym and I see people still using, single-use plastic water bottles. And, I've got, my reusable one. And I think to myself, I see on the treadmill or I see on weight floor, people still using plastic. And it just makes me upset. But I'm like, how do I approach them in a way that's kind, that's, that's not aggressive or doesn't make them feel crappy? And I'm thinking, like, maybe I say, hey, did you know there's an app you can earn green points if you switch? Something like positive. So I'm thinking of trying it out. I just might someday and see how it goes. That's a great idea. I'll report back. But I've got a quote here that I don't even know where it comes from, but it says, give yourself credit for the things you do, fix the things you can, accept that some things aren't going to come easy, make the intention, and the action will follow. So I think that's really important. Words to live by, and I think that can help inspire people.
Totally. That's amazing.
If you want to get involved with the movement, you can join our volunteer program. It's really easy. It's about 20-minute commitment or more if you'd like, but we try to keep it really simple as to what people can do. And basically, the job of a volunteer or what they're asked to do is to submit a positive story to us, because then we can really build this movement of positivity rather than doom and gloom. So we just ask for a positive story that's happening in their community, them to be the eyes and ears of Random Acts of Green, and submit one story every month of something positive that's happening with a caption and a picture. So it's very simple. And
I like that.
Green Spotted Volunteer Program, and we've got 406 volunteers, and we want to hit the 1,000 mark. So if people are interested in joining, that'd be great.
That's awesome. I will put all the information for that in the description box so people can find the website and all of their social media information. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no problem. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad, I like having the opportunity to tell more about Random Acts of Green. All right, you take care.
Bye. Thanks again for listening, everyone. If you're ready to dive into Random Acts of Green, you can learn more on their website, raog.ca, or on social media at Random Acts of Green. And definitely check out the app. You can find it anywhere that cool apps are found. If you're new to the podcast, head back to the beginning and learn all about living practical and waste-free, and be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review the episodes to help spread that good green news. Remember to stay positive in this crazy world. Talk to you soon.